Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. We have till noon. I'm happy to take questions along the way. It could be an hour where I talk, 30 minutes at the end, that's fine. Or if you want to ask questions along the way, that's fine too. The only thing I ask is that you make it clear that you're asking a question so that I don't say, excuse me, do you have a question, and then you not have one. Okay? Okay, so I'm delighted to be here. I'm here to talk about economics and ethics. And it is very strange in some sense because I've decided that you know what to do as well as I do, and on your job you know what to do better than I do. You know the rules of the game for your job. Is it okay to make a personal copy on the copying machine? Is it okay to send a personal fax on the fax machine? You know those things. I mean, in some offices it is, some it isn't. I can't advise you on that. So I don't know the specifics of your expense account rules or anything like that. I can give you some general rules that should guide you going forward and specific insights about ethics. When I say ethics, I mean the term loosely. I once spent an afternoon trying to get a good definition of ethics and gave it up as a bad job because it's just too much circular reasoning and arguments of the type. So what we're going to use it as honesty, integrity, doing the right thing, legal, all of that. We'll treat it like the famous definition of pornography. You'll know it when you see it, and we'll let the philosophers worry about the precise definition. Here are my main points. These are the 3 points on the test. Markets provide incentives to behave ethically because they will get you if you do not behave ethically. Oops. And the second point is related to that. Good ethics is good business. If you treat your customers and employees well, you will do well in the long run. And third is the one that most people miss, and that is that poorly designed policies virtually guarantee what we call unethical behavior. The converse, unfortunately, is not true, that great policies always produce great ethical behavior, but it is certainly true that poor policies will produce unethical behavior. I'm having difficulty with this. My goal is to provide an economic analysis of the question of ethics. I treat it as a fact that corporations do not exhibit unethical or ethical behavior. The people in them may, but organizations simply can't. It's the people, and that's a good thing because I really don't know what motivates legal constructs and pieces of paper. I do know what motivates people. That is self-interest. I'm going to let the philosophers argue about the people that jump on the hand grenade to save their friends and all that. I'm going to argue that most of us, almost all of the time, act in our own best interests. The Salomon Brothers trading schedule or scandal remains the best example I've seen. The first point is that markets provide incentives to behave ethically by imposing costs on those who do not behave ethically. Karpov and Lott wrote in the Journal of Law and Economics that fines, penalties, and legal fees are only about, and I left a blank there for you to fill in, a certain percent of the loss in market value due to the disclosure of criminal fraud. So a corporation is wandering along and its stock price is doing whatever stock prices do, and let's say it's at $120, and there is an announcement of some sort of criminal fraud, and it's a surprise, and the stock price drops from $120 to $100. I'm sorry, to $20. How much of that $100 decline is due to fines, penalties, and legal fees? Would anybody want to take a shot at that? I gave a clue because I said only. Yes. Yes?
I would say it's
1%. Anyone else?
Less.
Less. I need to take the only out. It's $6.50, 6.5%. Okay? Most people say 50, something like that. okay? So, yes.
Ray, I want to, the Salomon Brothers Treasury Bond scandal, can you just describe it?
I will later, but it boils down to this. Paul Moser, who was in charge of the government bond trading desk, found a loophole that allowed him to possibly gain an advantage. The Treasury came down on him, I feel unfairly, because he was not violating any rules at the time. They changed the rules, and he continued to violate them, and then it became a scandal. Okay? Okay. So it's 6.5%. Now, to get closer to the numbers that you're thinking of, that's for firms that get caught. And I don't think anyone here would argue that every firm that engages in criminal behavior gets caught. So put your own number on it. But if, say, 1 in 10 get caught, then the expected penalty is 65 cents out of that 100. Yeah.
Does that penalty include the expected losses to lawsuits to whoever the,
It not expected. We can observe the decline, and then, with the benefit of hindsight, 10 years later, we can look back and see what the fines actually were.
But does the penalty?
The decline is expected, and then we can compute the actual penalties with hindsight. The decline is based on the expected penalties, okay? You own a share of stock today. Bad thing happens, you go, oh boy, something bad's going to happen. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but something bad is going to happen. The stock price falls.
Okay, but the 6.5% doesn't include what is lost in civil court?
It does. Okay, so it's a chunk of money, but it's not a whole lot in terms of the potential, the stock price decline, let's put it that way. I argue that the penalties are very, very small in that sense, the legal penalties. Expected values less than 1%. That's not going to be enough to deter so much ethical behavior, quite honestly. If we take ethical behavior for granted, we're so sure it's rare. How many of you know where your dinner last night came from? Some of you know that you cooked it, but you don't know exactly where the food was packaged and things of that nature. All sorts of bad things could have happened. If you eat in a restaurant, you don't know your server that well, you don't know anything about that meal, and yet you eat it. It could have been poisoned, it could be low quality, all sorts of horrible things could happen. And yet, you have every right to expect that meal to be safe and high quality, because that's the way it always is. Why do we observe so much ethical behavior if the expected penalties are so tiny? And I have a good answer for that, and that's that good ethics is good business. If you do get sick or have a bad meal or get bad service or something, you will never go back there. You will tell your friends. You will put it on Yelp and hammer their Yelp rating, and that restaurant will suffer going forward. It's in their own best interests to make sure that you leave happy. So good ethics is good business. When I read Yelp and say, ooh, I'm going to go there and have dinner, I pay for the expected quality of that meal when I walk through the door, not promised quality. Talk is cheap. People can say anything, but I'm interested in their reputation and what they actually produce. He can say whatever he wants as the proprietor. I'm more inclined to believe his customers. Throughout society, people factor ethics into the price. If I happen to be at a sporting event of some sort and come up to you and say, would you like to buy a watch? I have a variety of watches here that are on sale, much cheaper and just as good as the ones in the local jewelry store. You're not going to pay as much as you would for a jeweler. The jeweler gives you a warranty. The jeweler will let you bring it back the next day if it's a wedding present or anniversary gift and the person doesn't like it, you can take it back and replace it. You aren't going to be able to find the person that bought, sold you the watch at the football game. So you pay for these incidentals that come from a reputable establishment. Helen Greaves at the University of Rochester down the road got a dissertation out of looking at two different kinds of car auctions. A car auction where it's, here's the car, period. And a car auction where the current owner is required to disclose defects. The brakes in here make noise, and I'm not quite sure what's wrong with them. Which cars sell for more? It's the one with the strict disclosure rules. Part of that is you're more sure of what you're getting. Part of it is if I have a really bad car, I'm going to put it in this pile over here. I'm not going to put it over here and tell you all the bad things about it. If I have a good car, I'll put it over here because I can honestly say the only thing that's wrong with it is the air conditioning. When it gets to be about 95 out, it has trouble. But other than that, it's fine. Well, that's not bad for a used car. Over here, it could be anything. The axle's about to go and so forth. So we see that it's priced throughout society. Why would we think shareholders would be any different?
So you talk about ethics, you mean only thing that would affect the customers? What about ethic in the production process? Are we talking about that at all?
I'm not sure what you mean by in the production process. Do you mean if in the production process I cut a corner and I put a bad ignition in my cars?
For example, like these things, I think that would affect the customer directly. The warranty, that benefits the customers.
Right.
Right, but then what about the production process? I was just thinking about, I was eating prawn last night, but the production of the prawn I ate last night is unethical. But it doesn't affect me.
Why is it unethical that you ate prawn? I'm not sure about this.
I'm from Thailand.
Okay.
And Thailand is the biggest prawn producer in the world.
Okay.
And the production process involves like slave trade and stuff.
Okay.
That doesn't affect me at all. That even makes the prawn cheaper. And that's
Okay, so you want me to make this argument. You want me to say that the product I am eating was produced using a production process of which I do not approve, and I am creating demand for that product.
yeah.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to let the philosophers worry about that, and I'll tell you. Let me give you an example that is similar in spirit, and I hope most of you would not be troubled by it. I was at a university function, and I happened to speak to the gentleman next to me and say, "How you doing?" And he said he was having a bad day, and I asked him why, and he said he had eaten an orange for breakfast that morning. And I asked him why that was so unsettling to him. Did he have some sort of medical condition? And he went into a long diatribe about how the orange was grown in California using pesticides and was shipped all the way to Knoxville, and therefore it increased the carbon footprint of on the environment, and he was contributing to erosion of the soil and other sorts of things, and he should only eat locally grown fruit. And I asked him what department he was in, and he said philosophy. And I said, well, I'm not going to argue with him. He can decide, and he could prove it to me too. He's crazy, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to sit and say you're crazy because you use the word slave trade, but somewhere in between, we'll let the philosophers decide who's crazy and who's not. Okay? Okay. I think I'm getting back to, I'm sorry. I have to flip a page here. My bad. There. Poorly designed policies produce bad behavior is my third point. I'm not surprised, for example, that Medicare and Medicaid cost so much more than people claimed they would cost when they were pushed through Congress. People always overconsume goods when the price is lower than its marginal cost. If it should cost more and the price is artificially low, then they buy more of it than they would otherwise. If a cost of a trip to the doctor would be $200 without insurance, but is only $10 with insurance, then you're going to go to the doctor more often. A small problem that you really shouldn't worry. It's not a big deal, but it's only $10. They have coffee and the nurse is always nice, and you know, why not go? What the heck? I'll stop at my friend's on the way back. You know, it's only $10. It's cheap entertainment, so I'll do that. And then I'm safe. You know, it's a 1 in a million, but it could be a serious problem. But not $200. Well, I'll go. So I overconsume the medical service. And that doesn't make me a bad person. I didn't make those rules. I didn't break any rules. Somebody else set the rules. I played according to them. And I think the proper response to someone who challenges me on that is, why are you surprised? The real issue here is you're surprised that I'm doing exactly what is predictable well before the actual behavior. The poorly designed policy produces the unethical behavior. So here's the answer to your question. This is the Salomon Brothers bond trading scandal. It remains the most instructive scandal of modern times. I love it because it's instructive. It will be true when you're 90 years old. And also that means that I can keep delivering much the same lecture over and over again for a very long time. And I'm basically lazy and have a lot to do. So I really love examples that fit all three categories. First, you need to know the bidding and allocation procedures that were in force at the time. These are not true now. The Treasury wised up finally. But at the time, these were the rules. The Treasury, yes?
When was that?
Well, the scandal was 89-90. Okay, but this was in force in the 70s when I first started paying attention to it. It's an old rule. The Fed would first announce the auction. Hey, you know, Wednesday we're going to auction a bunch of bills. And then they would announce the size of the auction. Then it gets interesting. They would actually begin the process. They would collect bids. So you know the size of the auction, the terms of the auction, you don't know the price yet, and you would submit a bid. I'm willing to buy this many at this price. And all of you would do that, and I would get bids from all around the world. I would collect all those. Then I would allocate securities to groups that are guaranteed a security. The Fed has securities rolling over every week. They need to be refinanced. So out of those securities that we have, the Fed gets theirs right there. We don't know the price yet, but they're going to get them. We also understand that as the reserve currency, we want to make sure that foreign governments and things like that can get their securities. So if a foreign central bank has placed an order for a certain amount, we'll take some securities and set it aside for them. They don't know the price they're going to get either. And then there's a third group of small people like me, non-competitive bidders. I don't know what the price is. I don't want to try to pick a winner and beat the market. I'm just going to take the average price, but I would like a security, please. And they'll set one aside for me. So now we're left with a reduced pile of securities to be sold in auction. We take the bids, I'm up to 3 now, and we sort from the highest price, which is the lowest bid yield, down to the lowest price, or the highest bid yield, and we start allocating. You bid too much, sucker, but you do get a security. Right on down until we're out of securities, and the rest of the people don't get them. They just don't get a security, okay? And that's the way it was built. And I want to do an example auction for you. Suppose I have $4.5 billion of 4-year notes, and the Fed needs $3 billion of that, and non-competitive bidders need $500 million. And then we have 3 bids from Bank of America, Citicorp, at the time of the scandal, it did exist, and a wealthy individual investor have asked for those 3 quantities of securities at those 3 yields, and the corresponding prices that go with them. So we would allocate $3.5 billion to the Fed and non-competitive bidders. The wealthy individual investors got his, but they seem to be very expensive. He's not going to earn very much on those. Citicorp bid the next highest. They get them. And now Bank of America is shut out because there are no more securities. Those are the rules. Okay? Well, if that's the case, Citicorp got a good deal. If you go back and do the weighted average yield or weighted average price, which you can calculate, you would see that Citicorp is going to earn 7.91%. The average investor is going to earn 5.54. That's a good deal. They're going to do better. Okay? Now, if those are the rules, I see a game. I love to play games with rules. You give me a set of rules, I'll try to find a way around them. It's just the way I am. I love to find ways around rules. It's not good when you're a child. You get spanked a lot. But other than that, it's tons of fun. What's my strategy? I'm going to submit a whole lot of bids near what the street calls the tail of the auction. That's the last accepted bid. They get the bill at the cheapest possible price. That's the tail of the auction. So I'm going to just throw a whole bunch of bids at the tail of the auction and try to get lucky. If I get lucky, I get a bill really cheaply. And if I miss, hey, what's the harm? No problem. I just didn't get a security. Okay? That's the game I'm going to play. It's heads I win, tails, who cares? Well, look, if I can figure that out, you can figure that out, and surely these brilliant minds on Wall Street that do this for a living can figure that out. And if they can't figure it out, their boss will tell them, because, I mean, this is a tried and true known strategy that has been enforced since the day the rules were announced. So what happened? In June of 1990, Paul Moser, who is the head of Salomon Brothers bond trading desk, submitted bids for over $100, 100% of the auction at a low price. So if it was a $10 billion auction, he submitted, say, $11 billion worth of bids. He's trying to hit the tail of the auction and play the game we played. Well, the Treasury said, you know, hey, nice try, but don't do that again. You know, we're worried about corners on the auction. You know, it would be a really bad thing if, for the sake of argument, you got all $10 billion of those securities. Because what had happened is you, as a Merrill Lynch dealer, you know, your customers have called you up and said, hey, you know, I want to get a security. And you say, sure, I'll get you one in the auction. And then Moser has them, every single one of them. Well, you know what that means. It means you're going to pay a whole lot of money for that. Your customer, if you try to pass it on to your customer, he's going to be really mad. And so, you know, we just don't want corners. I think that, and that's a very reasonable thing to say. And the Treasury says, you know, just don't do that anymore. I don't respond well to authority. And I would say to myself, what's the rule against this? Show me the rule where I did something wrong. Since you can't, I'm going to do it again. Okay? I'm going to do it again. Show me the rule. This is in my best interests. I'm going to try to make a lot of money. You made the rules. I'm not breaking them. And you're telling me to stop doing it. No, I'm going to keep doing it. And so he did it again. And the Treasury took his valid bid and threw it out. Suppose that you're my students, and I say, look, there's 3 tests, and they all count. And you take all 3, and then I pick on you, not anybody else, just you, and I say, I'm throwing your second test out. How'd you feel? Not very good. I think, you know, I made the rules, you played by them. I arbitrarily single you out for bad treatment in violation of my own rules. You are the person who should be upset in a case like that. So up to now, I feel like Moser is the aggrieved party. The Treasury finally gets its act together and institutes the rule that, look, nobody can bid for more than 35% of the auction. So if it's a $10 billion auction, Moser, the rule is now 3.5 is your limit. And I'm happy with that rule. That's a good rule, should have been there earlier. But up to now, there has been no violation of any sort, except Treasury, if anybody. In December of 1990, I think Moser lost perspective. The rules have been changed, and this is what he does. He submits 35% of the bids for a 4-year note auction, and that's fine. Salomon Brothers is perfectly legally doing that. He also submitted $1 billion in the name of Warburg Asset Management, which is one of their customers, and that's okay too, because what's going to happen is that, they're just acting as agent. The Treasury will sell the bills to Salomon, but Salomon will pass them on to Warburg. Okay, so this is Warburg's bid. They may have hired Salomon Brothers, but Salomon is not going to end up with this extra $1 billion. Okay, so that's fine. So where did anybody lose perspective? That comes right here. Warburg does not know this. Okay, so what Moser's planning to do is run 2 sets of books. The one that the government sees, he owns perhaps $3.5 billion, and his customer down the line owns $1 billion. And that's legal. That's what the government sees. What Warburg sees is we don't own any securities. Solomon's books, for its own internal control purposes, are they do own more than 45%. Or 35%. They own 45%. That is very bad. They broke the rules here, no question about it. And what happens, of course, this is a small profession. There aren't a whole lot of people in this business at the time compared to certain other industries. So what happens is Warburg eventually gets a note from Treasury, which they think, and they say, hey, Warburg, you're getting kind of close to that 35% limit. It's a new rule, so we want to make sure you're aware of it. And the people at Warburg go, remember that guy we went to school with as a Treasury? Look what that dummy did. We always knew he was an idiot. He went to Treasury instead of coming to work for, what a dummy. Ha, 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 ha. And they start faxing it all around Wall Street. And when a copy gets to Moser's desk, it's not very funny, okay? This is an unpleasant day for Paul Moser when that letter crosses his desk. So what do? What he did was go to Solomon's management. And he met with some high-powered people. The chairman was there, the president was there, the vice chairman was there, the general counsel was there. All of the big names were there. And he says, look, I did this in the February auction, and I'm really sorry about it. And the people there say, how many times did you do this? And he says, I did once. And they say, are you going to do this again? And he says, oh, no, no, no. And they say, good. We need to put this behind us. That's a very key moment. People mess up. What really matters is how they respond when they mess up. I can tell you a story how Solomon's management made the right decision. It happened once. It's not going to happen again. If we admit this, everybody's going to assume horrible things about us. We look bad for not policing our subordinates. We seem to have gotten away with it this one time. We'll make sure it doesn't happen again, and we'll learn our lesson and move forward. That's a plausible scenario. The other one is they say, look, this is on you, guy. This isn't on us. You messed up. We're suspending you right now, and you're in trouble. We're not taking the fall for you. That's another plan. And I can see both sides. I know what I do, but I can see the other side, okay? In June of '91, the Justice Department and the SEC begin subpoenaing Salomon Brothers clients and Salomon Brothers itself, and they want to see, what did you actually bid? And Salomon Brothers finally gets around to an institutional review of the government bond operations, and 2 months after that, they admit the illegal bids were made between December 1990 and May of '91. This is 2 months late and only after pressure after being caught. Okay, that weighs heavily in some things that happen later. There were substantial legal penalties. The Treasury barred Salomon from bidding for all government securities, not just the ones in the scandal, for a while. Salomon agreed to pay $122 million to the Treasury for securities violations, 68 to settle claims from the Justice Department, $100 million forfeited for private damage claims. It's $290 million, which is a lot of money back in the day. $290 million for a corporation. The key point, though, is this is nothing compared to what happened to Salomon Brothers in the market. Within a week, the stock price lost a third of its value. That amounted to $1.5 billion, which is way more than $270 million, or $290 million. There must be more fines that people expect to see coming down the road. And in fact, they were right. Federal regulators fined some people that Salomon had to cover, and Salomon agreed to pay fines to settle lawsuits and so forth. So these are large, but they're not 1.5 billion, even adding in the ones that came down later. I have a more current example. Part of the reason I like this is I can just add a new slide now and then. I'm going to present it even though it uses its improperly, and I'm going to allow you to decide which its are improperly used. It's the Knight Capital story. Knight Capital's punishment, free market justice at its best. It says 18 minutes ago at the time I saved the article. That was August 2nd, 2012. Knight Capital Group shares were down sharply. What happened? Erroneous trades entered Wednesday morning. Headlines and outrage sell newspapers. Knight messed up royally, causing disturbing dislocations and huge volume spikes. What they did was they entered they started using a new computer program, and the code was wrong, and they entered a whole bunch of bad orders. There was no way that the exchange could unwind that many bad trades, so they had to eat them. And they lost a bunch of money. Knight has been harshly punished for its sins. The company with $440 million in bad trades lost 60% of its market cap and has been forced to go hat in hand in search of a cash infusion or acquirer. Less than 24 hours after its trading error, Knight Capital, as it existed on Tuesday, has ceased to exist. There isn't a regulatory body on earth capable of acting with such merciless efficiency. The market will get you for mistakes, whether they are unethical or just mistakes. How does this affect the business? Well, that's hard to say, and I think a point here is business is not just business. It's not homogeneous. For some businesses, quality is easy and very cheap to determine by yourself. Reputation isn't very important in this case because I can take care of myself. If an employee puts out bad produce in my grocery store, I can see that. You know, it's right there. I can look at it. I can pick it up. I can hold and feel it. You know, I can tell whether it's good or bad. If I take it home and ooh, it's not very good, yeah, it's kind of my fault. I mean, I'm asking the grocery store to be 100% accurate. I mean, that's kind of absurd. I should at least be able to pick out my own produce. It's at least a little bit my fault, too. So I might very well go back to the store, and I might very well not tell all my neighbors about how horrible the lettuce I got at the grocery store was. It's just partly my fault. On the other hand, sometimes it's very difficult to determine quality. I used the example of used cars earlier in auction. George Akerlof won a Nobel Prize for explaining what we now call the lemons problem. When quality is difficult to determine, buyers bid less. They assume the worst. Now, who knows more about this used car you're considering buying? The current owner or the new owner? That is, you. Well, obviously the current owner. He drives it every day or so. He knows whether it's hard to start. He knows whether it idles well. He knows whether the tires are bad. He knows whether he's changed the oil regularly. He knows whether the air conditioning works. You know, he'd be able to tell you whether the heater works this time of year. You're unlikely to notice it this time of year if he's selling. He knows the car better than you do. So what's going to happen is you're going to say, this guy's selling the car today, not last week, not next week. He's selling it today. Why? And he knows more than I do. And furthermore, he's acting in his best interest. So I have to assume there's something wrong with the car. I don't know what it is, but there's got to be something wrong with this car, or he wouldn't be selling it. Now, it is possible that there's nothing wrong with the car. It's possible that somebody just got a raise and wanted a nicer car. It's entirely possible. But I'm not going to take the chance on getting stuck with a lemon. I have always loved this little cartoon, and I'll put it up as many times as necessary to get you to laugh at it, okay? You should see this new 4x4 they've come out with, Crunchy. That's his partner's name. It's huge, it's powerful, and it's expensive. And get this, they've named it the 1999 Male Ego. You see, it's huge, it's powerful, and it's expensive. I'll give you another chance. The punchline is, ironically, women usually end up driving the Male Ego. Okay, at least one person. That's good enough. Okay, I love that. But you can't easily tell whether a used car is good or not. So you tend to bid less. And what happens is, according to Akerlof, it's hard to find a good used, no, let's try that again. It's hard to sell your good used car for fair market value because people can't really believe that it's a good used car. You know more than they do. So it's difficult to get that market to work. Now, we've done better lately with things like certified used cars where somebody stands behind it or puts a 90-day warranty on it and so forth. The market is evolving ways around this problem, but it's still very difficult. That market is not as smoothly efficient as some others. Reputation is very important in cases in which quality is difficult to determine. I'm more likely to go to a dealer who's well regarded around town and pay more for a car there than I am to buy a comparable car from a stranger because he has repeat business. I can ruin his reputation. I can't do that with you. You're never going to sell another car, right? So it's much more likely that the dealer is going to be able to charge more for the car. He has more to lose if it's a lemon. Why have McDonald's replaced independent restaurants along freeways? Some of you don't remember the day before freeways. Some of you don't remember the early days of freeways. But back in the day, there wasn't McDonald's along the way. It was Fred's Grill and Hospital, or Maria's hair salon and restaurant. You know, things that don't necessarily go well together, but that's what they were. You know, they're little mom and pop places. And they're all gone along the freeway. They're all McDonald's and Burger King and Subway and things like that. And I want to know why. Because I can still find little mom and pop places in town, but not on the freeway. So why? And I'll let you figure it out for yourself. I drove 2 425-mile legs to get from Knoxville to this part of the country. You know, drove up, stopped, drove the rest of the way. Along those 425-mile legs, I rarely stopped. When I did, why did I stop? Go to the bathroom. What else? Get gas and get something to eat. Those are the only 3 reasons to stop. Modern cars are more comfortable than any other chair I have and things like that. They have air conditioning, good music. They're very, very nice places to be. So why stop, right? 3 reasons. Okay. Now, suppose I stop at an exit and, you know, I need to go to the bathroom, I'm hungry, and the gas tank is about empty. And I stop and I see a place and I get out and the bathroom's dirty, the gas is very expensive, and the food looks overpriced. Am I going to get back in the car, drive to the next exit, and take a chance on getting the same thing again? Or am I just going to say, well, you got me? What am I going to do? I'm going to say you got me, okay? And furthermore, how many of you plan to drive to Knoxville over the next 20 years from here? So how am I going to hurt that guy's reputation by telling you that Maria's Grill, or it was the hair salon and restaurant, is bad? Don't stop there. Yelp might work. Modern society is wonderful. Yelp might work. Are you going to check the Yelp rating for Maria's along the way? Are you that confident that's when you're that confident nature's cell phone is going to ring around then?
If I have a passenger.
If you have a passenger. Oh, I see. So you pull off, you'll check Yelp, or you're coming up on it, you'll check Yelp.
I told my passenger to.
Tell your passenger to check it. Okay, I assert that the following is less likely than you think. You tell your passenger, hey, we're coming up, this exit is a mile away or 2 miles away or 10 miles away or whatever, and there's a sign that says Maria's Restaurant. Would you check the Yelp rating? And
Google Maps will tell you whether there's Maria's restaurant.
sorry?
You don't need to see the sign anymore.
Okay, you don't need to see the sign. So you check your cell phone, and you who's your carrier? Because obviously it's better than mine. And the person you're with. So you bring along a person, especially for this purpose, and they check. I just assert that it's more trouble than it's worth. Okay, I may be wrong, but I assert that at some point you'll say it's not worth it. An easier solution might be to put a place that cannot do this to me. And the reason is I'm going to go to McDonald's because, look, I know what I'm getting, okay? The company monitors its franchises to ensure uniform quality. I do a test every time I go into a new place, I go to the McDonald's. Because so far, it seems that every McDonald's from here to Senegal is the same except for one thing, and that is the weather outside. The exception being Germany. Yes, you can get beer at a McDonald's in Germany, at least when I was there. But every other place I've been to McDonald's, in any state of the union in any country, it has been the same except for the weather outside. I'm not going to say it's a good reputation. That's for you to decide. But I know what I'm getting. And when I stop, I know what I'm going to get at McDonald's. I know within a few cents how much it's going to cost. Your dollar menu is more expensive than ours, but not that much more. Percentage-wise, it is. But it's not going to be, the burgers on the dollar menu are not going to be $8. They're not going to be $6. And the restroom might not be great, but it's going to be serviceable. Now the gas, well, I can't tell. Okay? But if that McDonald's messes up, I'm going to be angry at my local McDonald's in Knoxville. And if I tell you about what happened to me at McDonald's, it could affect you because there's a McDonald's in your area. So as a customer, even before Yelp, I have much more ability to harm McDonald's for a bad experience than I do with a little mom and pop place that nobody's ever going to visit again. So the incentives are such that given a choice, look, I'm not looking for a gourmet meal here. I'm looking for a restroom, something to tide me over till I get where I'm going, and some gas. And McDonald's gives me 2 out of 3. They serve the function I'm looking for now, get back on the road. I'm much more likely to go there than go to a place where I don't really know what I'm getting. It might take a little longer. It's not going to be able to compete. Places with little repeat business have great difficulty along freeways. So back to Salomon's underwriting business. How easy is and cheap is it to determine the value of a new IPO? In that initial public offering. How much is this company worth? My old college roommate started a business. He's a little older than me. He isn't going to work forever. He's going to sell this business. It's becoming pretty important. He's on 5 continents now. One person in Asia. It's not like it's a It's not like it's General Motors or something like that, but he's done well. How much is his company worth? Well, yeah, I like to think I'm pretty good at what I do, but I really have no clue how much his company's worth. I could spend days doing it. I'm still not really sure what it's worth. I can do better than throw a dart, but boy, the potential for error here is enormous. And if you go to my old roommate and say, how much is your company worth, you have two problems. One is he has enormous incentives to outright lie to you. Okay? The second is, well, I'll finish the story. You can't credibly expect to get even later. The average number of securities issues per CEO per lifetime is how many? What's the average number of securities issues per CEO per lifetime? 1. So you're not going to be able to get even with these guys next time, and you can't ruin his reputation so that somebody else gets even. I mean, there isn't going to be a next time. So that's one problem. The second problem is, if I started a business with 2 people and made $50 a week, and now I'm on 5 continents, even if there's only 1 person in Asia, I'd feel pretty good about that. And my guess is that he's really, really very, very impressed with the caliber of his workforce. I mean, I know for a fact, because, we get together and I listen to him, he's just raves about some of his staff. This guy, he's in compliance and stuff. This guy, his customers are successful 99.7% of the time if they run into problems with government. They are cleared. The average for the industry is 92%. My guy's much better than he is, on and on and on and on and on. Okay, he's just excited. I mean, you have to be excited to do that, right? But an investment banker's job is to say, step back a second here, wait. Everything he says is true. But you need to know that guy he's raving about is 63 years old. He's in reasonably good health, but he is 63 years old, and I don't know how long he's going to work. He says 65 to 67. I don't know who the person is that's coming up behind him, and I just thought you might want to know that before you make your bid. Okay, he says things like that. I mean, his job, of course the founder is excited. He's not lying, he's honest. He has incentives to lie, he's not lying, it's the truth. It's just he's so excited. He can't give you a measured, unbiased opinion. An investment banker's job is to do that, give you a measured, they're required to do that because they did one last week. And they're going to do another one next week. And if this one turns out poorly, their business is really going to suffer, just like if they sold lousy cars. So they have incentives to get a fair price for both sides and find the right deal. So there's a good reason to use an investment banker. It's very hard and difficult to determine the value of an IPO. Okay, we did that. So in this case, reputation is extremely valuable. It's a little bit like McDonald's on the freeway. We want a company with repeat business because it's difficult to determine the value when the incentives are so wrong. The second question I have is, on the heels of this scandal, who do you want to hire to do your IPO for you? Do you want Salomon Brothers, a known cheater and crook, to say you're honest? As a securities investor, I'm going to think, wait, I don't know you. I know you have all these bad incentives to tell me wrong things, and to reassure me you hired a crook? This just doesn't look good. So I think what you're going to see is an enormous problem with their underwriting business. And they did. They had a horrible problem. It was so bad that they lost 75% of market share. I'm not a huge market share fan, but when things fall 75% in a booming market. I'm down to 10 minutes. We're doing questions along the way, though, aren't we? Okay. I'm going to keep talking until you tell me to shut up. I mean, you're interrupting anyway. Okay, thanks. Okay. So it was so bad that rumors of firm failure began to circulate, and that made it even worse. If the firm's going to fail, I'm certainly not going to hire you now, because what's your incentive? Take the money and run, right? If I'm going to be shot at sunrise, I'm eating bacon and ice cream and all those things for my dinner tonight because I don't care about my cholesterol. Okay? The underwriting business was hammered. Okay, the headlines would look bad. If I'm with the state of California, I don't want to see a headline saying, State of California continues to work with known crooks, Salomon Brothers. I don't want to see that headline. I'll just deal with Merrill. It's just as easy. But business is not business. Poor policies produce bad behavior, but good policies can limit that. Futures market trading was unaffected by the scandal for Salomon. Why? Suppose I order a pizza from you. You run a pizza business. I order the pizza, you deliver the pizza, and I say, yeah, I'm not paying. And then I call you again, and I do it again. And the third time I call you, what do? You don't go. Okay, so I say, she got me. Okay, so I come down and I say, look, here's $100. I'm sorry, I blew it. I really do want a pizza. I just lost it a couple times. Here's $100, and when I call you next time, you take the price of the pizza out of that $100, okay? I'm going to, bye, have a nice day. And now I call you and order a pizza. Will you deliver the pizza? Yeah, you already got the money. It's better than cash on delivery. It's cash before delivery. I can be a complete crook, and she'll deal with me because we've set it up such that it works that way. Okay? Well, how does futures market work? Well, what happens is we're down in this pit, okay, and we're all dressed crazy so that people can identify us. And I'm waving at you, and you're waving at me, and eventually we go, I'm trying to sell, and you're trying to buy, and we wave around, and sooner or later we go, shoot. I think this is the signal for a deal. Okay? And in the old days, Solomon would write on a piece of paper, throw it over our shoulder, the flunky would run up, pick it up, and go enter it. Now we just punch it into our iPad, and we have a deal. As soon as we have a deal, I'm not dealing with you anymore. The exchange steps between us. And I sell to the exchange, and the exchange sells to you. Do you care if I'm a crook since you're buying from the exchange? Do I care if you're a crook and might not pay me if I'm selling to the exchange? No. I don't care who you are. Now, I haven't eliminated risk here. Very important. I've transferred risk. This system transfers the risk to the exchange. So we're only halfway home. The exchange needs to worry about you and needs to worry about me. How do they solve that? Well, they don't let us play unless we put up margin. We have to give them a big pile of money every single morning as margin. And if it turns out that I have a horrible day and I lose a big pile of money and say, I can't pay you, I'm not going to pay you, nah, you just keep my margin. And the next day you won't let me play because I don't have enough margin, so I can't go to the exchange. Now, if I re-up, then I can do it. And if you win and have extra money in your margin account, you can take the money out. You have to have enough to cover a massive loss, a one in, I think it's 100-year loss. Okay? So as long as Sally meets margin, who cares what their reputation is? This market is structured beautifully. And reputation doesn't matter. It's cash before delivery. You can't do that with an IPO. Poor policies produce bad behavior. Good policies will not always work, but boy, they can go a long, long way. Management had to reevaluate other business risks. This is the market continuing to punish people for bad behavior. Sally had to pay $30 million because they were being sued about a Revco IPO. Revco merged with somebody, and it just worked out bad, bad, bad. And the question becomes, was it a bad deal and Salomon Brothers knew it and went through anyway? Or was it really just a good but risky deal that turned out badly? They threw it snake eyes. Well, the people suing said, Salomon Brothers knew all along that it was a bad deal, and Salomon Brothers is saying it was not a bad deal. It was a good deal that turned out badly. Business is risky, and they're fighting about this. It's a lot of money at stake, and it matters what the actual thing was. And Salomon wrote a check for $30 million, which was a lot more than people expected, just to get away from it. Part of that was management didn't have the time to fight this battle. Part of it is management doesn't have the credibility to handle this anymore. You're the expert witness for Salomon Brothers. I'm the expert witness for the plaintiffs. And you're up there saying, oh, it was a good deal that just went bad. We would never sell junk to our customers. I would love to cross-examine that. Tell us about the Salomon Brothers bond trading scandal that your firm participated in. I mean, this is not a good situation for Salomon Brothers. They have no credibility anymore. So maybe they were going to pay, expecting they would have settled for $10 million, $15 million, I don't know. They settled for $30 million. They dropped Mark Rich and Company as a customer. They had a long, very profitable, very equitable relationship, ethical relationship with Mark Rich and Company for a very long time. Everybody was happy, and they just dropped them. Why did they drop him? Well, they dropped him because Mark Rich, the person, was a fugitive from justice. He was in Switzerland on tax evasion charges. Now, up until this point, Salomon Brothers says, look, you come to me and want to write a story about how I'm dealing with this evil Mark Rich and Company. I'm going to say, show me where Mark Rich and Company is evil. And you won't be able to do it. Your argument is with Mark Rich, the person, and I'm not dealing with him. Okay? So, and because it's a good deal, for both of us, I've been keeping it going. But now, this is just too bad. We have to sever a perfectly good business relationship because it just isn't worth fighting under the circumstances. I don't have the ammo. Did I see a hand? No. The labor markets were bad. Moser got hammered. He had all sorts of problems with civil claims and criminal charges. These are the other guys that were in the room when they had the conversation about, is it going to happen again? And they were forced to resign and all those horrible things. The other employees, people like us working for Salomon Brothers, the daily commute is really bad. I mean, we're talking to somebody and where do you work? We're having a dinner party. Where do you work? I work with Salomon Brothers. Oh, you're one of those crooks that work with Salomon Brothers. I mean, I don't want to hear that sort of thing. It's almost as bad as, you're a White House intern. I mean, wow, horrible. Just, you're associated with these evil, bad firms. And so now, when I come to you and say, hey, we went to grad school together, and I went to work for Merrill, and you went to work for Salomon Brothers, and we still get together for lunch, and I always try to hire you away, come to Merrill. You always say, nah, Salomon's treating me pretty well. I think we're doing all right. I like it. Make a decent salary, got a good bonus coming this year, and I think I'm pretty happy here. But thanks for the offer. You've been saying that. Now you're working with Salomon Brothers, you're putting up with this, the firm might fold, and I come to you and say, hey, I've always admired your work. When you always said no, what do you say now? Well, you're much more likely to leave and come work for me. And I get to pick who I call. I'm not calling this empty chair who's always calling in sick and can't get his work done. So I only call the cream of the crop when I raid Salomon's ranks to try to bring people like you in. All right? So Salomon's left with the bad people, and I get the good people. So you call me in as an expert witness and say, hey, we blew it, we need some damage control. I say, well, what's the problem? And you say, well, we have a crappy reputation and our customers hate us and we're losing all sorts of business because they just don't trust us. They only buy things from us on the cheap. Things are horrible. So I'll send you a bill for $10,000, $12,000 and say, rebuild your reputation. Thank you very much. I'm done. That probably wouldn't suit you. If your reputation is the problem, yes, you need to rebuild your reputation. You want to know how. How do you rebuild your reputation? Well, that will take more time and cost you more. And frankly, I don't think I can do it. But I can do some things that would probably help. So let's go down the list. We need to rebuild your reputation so that people perceive you as being ethical. First, let's get rid of those clowns that messed up. We're going to suspend everybody that's involved. That, I think it was Furstein was the outside counsel. What's the outside counsel's job? Keep us out of the papers, and these days keep us out of Twitter and so forth. Just your job is to, how does this play in the media? That's outside counsel's job. And he said, okay, we'll sweep this under the rug. No, you're gone. So he's gone. Bad things happen to good people, but when you hide it, you run into all sorts of trouble. The cover-up is always worse. They appointed a guy named Warren Buffett to be the interim chairman. Well, this is back in the day before Warren Buffett entered the political arena and started getting a little muddy and stuff. Back in the day, he was absolutely squeaky clean. His word was law. And he risked his reputation getting down in the mud and wallowing around with these slimy characters at Salomon Brothers. I personally think he saved the firm. Look at this is the New York Times, again, back in the day when people read the New York Times, and I'll come over here and point. This is September 19th, I think, 1992 or 3, I can't really tell. Bad scan, but that's what scans were back in the day. Buffett's conservative mold. Now, I don't mean conservative here in the sense of liberal conservative. I mean conservative as in play safe, not take chances, we'll be here tomorrow conservative. And how Berkshire plays it safe. And look at this headline. Salomon workers have a far different company ethos in the Buffett era. All of those bad things that happened, they're not going to happen anymore. And Derek Mon is the chief operating officer now. We'll get to him in a moment. But you can't buy better coverage for a firm coming out of a scandal. This would not happen if they don't get Warren Buffett to risk everything. Customers say, if Buffett's at the helm here, I'll give him one more chance. I personally think he saved the firm. That Derek Mon that was in that picture there was appointed CEO. He had a wonderful credential that was greatly in need at the time. He was not there when the scandal broke. He was, if he had been around, people would always question what you were doing when the things were going on and why didn't you handle it better. And maybe you have good answers, but you don't have the time to deal with it. He could concentrate on running the business. Go public. Your reputation's no good, but Coopers & Lybrand's is very good. Get them to come in and clean you top to bottom and say, okay, they're all right. Now, I understand you're paying Coopers & Lybrand to say good things about you. I understand that, and that's a real incentive problem there. But on the other hand, what is Coopers & Lybrand? A desk, a phone, and a whole bunch of very smart people with good reputations. That's about all they are. Now, if they mess up, what do they have left? A desk and a phone, right? They have so much to lose that it's indistinguishable from being honest. They simply can't afford to be dishonest and mess up. So even though you're paying them, that is offset by them having so much to lose if they mess up. This could be one of the, I mean, Arthur Andersen. Does anybody know where Arthur Andersen is today? They said Enron was okay. They're gone, okay? So they bought Coopers & Lybrand's reputation, okay? Here's one that is for finance geeks. I like this. They reduced leverage and improved liquidity. They sold off parts of the business and took the money and paid down debt. Why did they do this? Oh, this is good. First, I say, all right, they're going to be able to make their bills. They have less debt and so forth. They're going to be around longer. I get that. But the one I wouldn't have got was now they can concentrate on running the business. I had bought your subsidiary and we were making it work and it wasn't going great, but it was going okay, and we were going to stick it. Well, now I don't have time to do that. We're going to sell, spin off the business, and sorry, we just don't have time to work on this anymore. We got to concentrate on these other things. So we're going to shrink the business so we can focus better, and we're going to do that by selling off things and paying down debt. This means I'm much more likely to avoid bankruptcy, which means I'm much more likely to care about repeat business, which means it's much more likely I'm going to treat you well. How do we keep people honest? Well, we've known the answer for millennia now. The problem is in the doing, but we know how. You remember the story of Odysseus in Homer's Odyssey, right? The sirens would sing beautiful music from the shore, and the boats would come sailing along. Very honest, very ethical sailors would come swimming along, try to sail past. The sirens would sing. The men who had been on the boat for 3 years, they'd go, oh, let's go listen to the, and they race off, and the sirens eat the crew. First, I left out a step. The rocks would crush the ship, and when the sailors would go to shore, then the sirens would eat the crew. So many honest, ethical sailors had all sorts of good intentions to get past, but they failed. So what do? We know the solution. Circe is good buds with Odysseus. Let's say they're getting along well. And she provides the solution. She warns him ahead of time that this is going to happen. And what do? They stuff their ears with wax. But Odysseus wants to hear the sirens. I mean, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, but he wants to live to tell about it after the once-in-a-lifetime thing, right? So what does he do? He lashes himself to the masts and gives orders to not paying attention to my orders until we're past, right? So what do we see? We see the crew did not hear and was not tempted. Odysseus, by prearrangement, is unable to act. Boy, I'd love to steal that money, but for some reason or other, it's in a safe, and only you know the conversation. I can be a big crook. I can't act. Okay? Don't put yourself in position to be tempted, and arrange a way that you are not able to act. There is no bacon in my house. There is no ice cream in my house. When I weaken, I can't act. If it is in my house, shortly there will be none left anyway. So I just, just those two things are good. So, we did all this, goodness. Couple hints. Government, stop enforcing regulations as much. This is the way you get more honest behavior. Stop enforcing regulations. Instead, revise the regulations that encourage cheating. There are regulations out there that encourage cheating. You don't like the way Medicare is being gamed? Well, you can change those rules. Why don't you do it? Yeah.
So what's the logic behind spending less time enforcing regulations?
Well, I could get the IRS to come after, or whatever the enforcement agency is, for Medicare and get after your mom for drawing Medicare, or your grandma. Boy, am I old. Your grandma for going in and abusing Medicare because, you know, there's a nice doctor that holds her hand and takes her pulse and things, and you know, she's just playing safe, but she really doesn't need to go. And they could crack down on your grandma, or they could change the payment structure so that the copay's higher. She's not as tempted.
What about things like, you know, collusion and monopoly power, things where the,
Give me a specific.
okay, so two firms own together like 80% of the market for a good that has high barriers to entry,
Mm-hmm.
and they decide to collude, and instead
Mhm.
of competing against each other, agree on much higher prices than are currently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Okay, so
it seems like that's bad for social welfare.
it does seem to me that that's a bad social welfare. Let me cast that in terms of the banking industry. Can I do that? Okay. Instead of trying to greatly enforce, and by the way, some of the things that I'm going to list I'm in favor of. Instead of making sure that they have position limits on their futures contracts and making sure that they have an actual need for the good that they're using, they're hedging, they're not speculating, and make sure they have capital requirements and doing all these lists of things, I could just say, you're too big, you need to shrink. It's going to be much, much harder to collude if there's an extra 40 banks in the banking system.
Isn't that still creating a regulation and then enforcing it?
Yeah, but it's once I have them shrink, it's much easier to do that. I think that's less costly to monitor. But I agree your point. This is not going to be perfect. It's not going to solve every problem. But it is going to do a whole lot toward getting us there. Yes.
And you're not saying don't enforce regulations. You're saying pick and choose your time and your energy and your effort so that you spend more time revising and tightening up the frameworks rather than fixing
Right.
all
I'm
the holes that are open.
My punchline, if I can, is that's here, that's not up there, is, you know, we do not need more regulation. We need better, saner regulation. We have regulations that serve very little purpose other than allow people to bribe government, which is tempting in itself. And those regulations should be revised or dropped rather than enforced. And spend your money on other things where the regulation is actually pretty much the way we want it, and we'll enforce that one. Okay. Here's one. When the Treasury auctions were first introduced, Milton Friedman said, you know, you're going to have this problem where people are going to try to game the system. Well, you know what? They game the system. Surprise! Instead of going through all of this aggravation, wouldn't it have been better to move to a one-price auction right away, where, you know, we do everything the same except we sort down till we run out of bids, and there's, you know, these people aren't getting securities, and then we say, okay, everybody, now we're going to compute the price that all of you get. We'll take the weighted average of the successful bids, and that's what you all get. Now there's no reason to game the system. Problem solved. I don't need to enforce that old regulation anymore. I think that's rather cool. I see virtually no harm. In fact, I see benefits if you want to get into how people would change their bidding behavior. It's actually benefits by moving to a one-price auction. And we don't have to worry about enforcing it. We don't have scandals. Who knows how many scandals we missed? This is the kind of regulation I'm talking about. Not all of them, but there's a lot like this. I have one for corporations. Stop looking for honest employees. Of course, sticklers in the audience will say, you mean spend less time looking for honest employees. and instead spend more time devising compensation schemes that pay for honest behavior. So I have an example. Well, I thought I did, yes. Sears Automotive. When I was a kid, Sears was Walmart, Target, Costco, and Amazon.com kind of rolled into one. You need a shirt, you go to Sears. You need a wrench, you go to Sears. You need a washer, you go to Sears. You name it, you go to Sears. Things started breaking down for Sears for a variety of reasons. And they ran into enormous legal problems, a lot of customer anger about their auto repair system, which was being, accused, apparently rightly so, for recommending and performing unnecessary repairs. Okay, now, Sears could fire all their dishonest mechanics and go find honest ones. But I'm going to argue that first, that's very expensive, and second, I don't really think that Sears mechanics are systematically that much worse than anybody else's mechanics. I think there's something else going on here. So I want to look at the compensation scheme. Sears employees were paid on commission, like Nordstrom. And the reason that happened was when Sears started going badly, they did what all the business school professors told them to do, which is go look at a company that's doing better and do what they do. Okay? So they looked over at Nordstrom's, which was hot at the time, and they said, oh, Nordstrom pays on commission, we should pay on commission. And so they started paying their people on commission. Now, here's the problem. You go into Nordstrom's, and may I use you as an example? You're looking for this beautiful dress that serves every purpose. You can wear it for business, you can wear it for an after-dinner drink and so forth and so on. You can wear it to formal things like somebody else's wedding, not yours of course, and all those things. You just got to have the right dress. And you come in and you're trying on a bunch of dresses, and I, the salesman, start saying, oh, this is great, that color looks wonderful on you. You definitely need to buy that one, it's wonderful, you need that dress. Who knows better whether you need that dress, you or me? You. Okay? Now, we're going to move you to Sears Automotive waiting room. And I come out and I say, you need new CV joints. Who knows better, me or you? Probably not you. Now, you see the problem here. If I'm paid on commission, I have incentives to do the following. Ooh, these CV joints are kind of bad. And there's two things that could happen here. One is I could come out and tell you the complete truth, which is this. Your CV joints are going bad. The way CV joints work is they will, begin giving you rough, you'll hear grinding and things like that in about 5,000 miles. And it isn't going to get any better, but you got 5,000 miles, you'll probably hear some grinding. And then you've got another couple thousand miles, and what's going to happen then is it's going to lock up on you, or you could have some issues there, and you're going to have to get them fixed, which is the complete truth. The other problem, is that a hand? Yeah.
I just, with car repairs, this incentive scheme is pretty universal at like dealerships and car repair places, so that it might be the compensation scheme, but it might also be the combination of the compensation scheme and the thing you said about McDonald's. I can hurt Sears when they do a bad job. I would never want to hurt Steve's Automotive, but it wouldn't hurt him so much if I get a bad one down the street in Barrington. So.
Right, and that is true. Yeah. That is true. The reputation is definitely a factor.
Also with car repair here, it's really difficult to get an honest thing.
Yeah, and I just told a perfectly honest story, but I could also come out and tell you, this is an unpredictable process, and you could be driving along any time, your wheels could lock up, spin out, you hit a tree, you kill your kid. I could tell you that story, which is also perfectly true. Could happen. And I know which, I wouldn't tell it in so many words, but I have incentives to play very, very safe here, because I'm going to make more money if you fix this repair. So what we learn here is that in one case, the customer has the information she needs to protect herself, so commission might be the way to go. In another case, she doesn't, and that creates all these bad incentives. So instead of going out and firing all your mechanics and stuff, change your compensation scheme, because Sears, which is a big company that sells many different products, is trying to impose one compensation scheme on all of them. The result was unethical behavior because the incentives were wrong. The moral is to search for honest employees, design your contracts and your business to reward ethical behavior. I am going to push my luck with the lady with signs and give you an example from the 2012 Olympics. Viewers of the badminton semifinals were subjected to a horrible scandal. Do you remember the horrible scandal? Go ahead. You're just nodding?
Well, I just remember the players were setting up the games.
They were intentionally trying to lose. See, the loser would get to play one team, and the winner would have to play, I believe, the Chinese team. And the Chinese team was unbeatable. Okay? So I want to lose this match so that I get to play South Korea or something. I got a chance at the silver medal. So I'm trying to lose. Well, of course, you're trying to lose too, right? And so they were intentionally hitting it into the net, and it was ludicrous TV, and it was horrible, okay? And my first thought was, I didn't know that incentive scheme. My first thought was, if I'm going to bribe somebody to lose, it's not going to be a team sport, because I'm much more likely to get caught and much harder to do, right? But here's what happened. This is a poorly designed policy. This article was written in August 2nd, 2012. Depressing and unacceptable were the words used by Sebastian Coe to describe the badminton players from South Korea, China, and Indonesia who are alleged to have deliberately lost their final round-robin matches in order to obtain favorable knockout seedings. I agree there's a scandal here, and there ought to be suspensions. The officials who devised the format for the badminton competition should resign their posts immediately and return home at their own expense. The athletes? No punishment is needed. They did not do anything wrong. They had already qualified for the knockout stage. All that remained was who has to play the unbeatable team. And do you want to be remembered as the silver medalist or the team that didn't medal but was undefeated in the preliminary rounds? Well, I want to win the silver medal, not be undefeated in the preliminary rounds and then get beat. It's up to the administrators to structure the competition so this doesn't come up. This is not hard. Set it up so that losing doesn't pay. Other sports do it. This is wholly the fault of the people who set it up. The spirit of the Olympics does not require athletes to act against their own interest. Blaming the athletes for the failures of the organizers was truly depressing and unacceptable. So to recap, markets provide incentives to behave ethically by imposing costs on those who do not behave ethically. Good ethics is good business, and poorly designed policies produce unethical behavior. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
With all the auction, anyway, with Salomon Brothers, because they bid unethically on auctions, they make money?
They were in a position to make a lot of money. How much they actually made, I don't know. I mean, it's conceivable they didn't make any money at all on it because they threw a lot of bids at the tail trying to, but they were too low. What we'd have to do is find out which of the bids were legal, which were illegal, take those out and redo it. But that isn't the case. They were all illegal collectively. You can throw out any 20%. So. Well, we can't tell. See, we can't tell because we don't know which were the illegal bids. In a pool where, oh, there's too much water here, which are the bad water molecules that we need to get rid of? Well, you can't do that. You know, it's all of them, and you know, take out any one, it's as good as anything else. That's the same as it is with these bids. There's too many bids here.
All right, I was just trying I was thinking about the 6.5%
Yeah.
in fees, and if that was the case for Solomon.
Oh, Salomon Brothers' legal fines were more than 6.5% of the 1.5 billion that the market value lost.
I have another question, Ray.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
okay.
go ahead, Masha.
But, as you know, I came here in the middle of the meltdown. So the searing experience for me is 2008, 2009. And if you could recast this lecture, could you recast it with some of the firms then and make the same argument that you've made this morning? Do you think it held through what we saw in 2008, 2009?
I think that there were a lot of very bad incentives and bad precedents set during that. I think the safety net was badly used. There were tremendous incentives for companies to gamble because they knew they were going to be bailed out. I think that is a horrible, horrible design flaw in our system. I don't know of a way to fix it necessarily. When push comes to shove, Congress can do whatever it wants. No Congress binds a future Congress. So they can say, well, this Congress passed a law we're not allowed to, we're going to do it anyway. They can do that. I think that was a critical error. I think that some of the rules of requiring certain institutions to hold investment-grade securities is probably not a good idea, because what happens then is you get games. There really aren't enough investment-grade securities out there, so the price gets bid way up, and there's a large gap at the time between investment-grade securities and not investment-grade securities. The prices are dramatically different. Well, what I want to do is find an investment-grade, can you get this baby just barely up, and so we start gaming. There's incentives to fake the numbers. There's incentives to bribe the rating agencies. There are incentives for financial engineers to say, how can I tweak this? And one of the ways to tweak it is to guarantee it from some other institution. This institution will pay but now you need to follow all those guarantees. Another thing's clamp down on the swap market. In the swap market, you can make a swap with her, and she can make a swap with her, and she can make a swap with me, and it turns out, these guarantees, she lays off the risk to her, and then I can make a deal and lay it off to her, and she has it again, and she won't even know it. And is this lady at the end of the chain good? I have no idea. All I know is my book with her book. I don't know what other deal she has. How do you solve that problem? You have a central clearinghouse like the futures market. At the end of the day, all of these go into the pot. We net them out. And it turns out, the only thing we need to do is I write you a check for $200, and she writes me a check for $200, and we're done. All the rest net out. We can do things like that that are not going to guarantee no meltdown, but they're not that expensive, and they would help an enormous amount. Guess who's opposed to that? The 20 or so big investment trading firms that do these swaps. They're the ones who don't want this because they make money on it, and if they fail, the government will bail them out. Others? 12 on the dot. Woohoo! I'll talk more at lunch if anybody's interested.